Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Transit Report this week. Thank you all for being here. I was just sharing with Lasita, I am in a coffee shop. My internet was down today, so hopefully this will come through clear and everybody can hear me. And feel free to join me as well if you have questions or comments as I move along through the week. I'll be glad to chat with you. To start with today, we're actually going to start back up just to Saturday. We did have our full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus over the weekend on Saturday afternoon. Now, we were not able to see this, of course, in the Western Hemisphere, but maybe some of our friends on the other side of the world got to take it in. I did do a talk with Brandy Jordan on Saturday that we did post in the Discord where we went pretty in depth on this eclipse cycle that we've been in. And you are welcome to access that and watch more. I'll just do a little bit of review here just to kind of bring us up to speed as we start Monday this week. You know, we had a solar eclipse 2 weeks ago in Libra. And of course, we discussed that in this transit report as well. And at that time, we were talking about Libra. We were talking about relationships and harmony being in the quarter of duality. And we were sharing about Chiron being opposite to that solar eclipse. So the polarity of Aries was involved. And so there was quite a message about dealing with relationships and how we relate to those relationships, how we have our own voice, the fact that Chiron was involved. There may have been some element of healing needed or forgiveness or some sort of up-leveling of where we stand within our relationships. And if there wasn't a personal relationship that brought to mind for your own particular scenario right now, could have been just how you stand in relationship to everything else, right? But Libra speaks so much to our ability to achieve equilibrium, to have balance about where we are in relationship to whatever we're experiencing. Now, 2 weeks later, because these eclipses always come in pairs, and we always have an eclipse whenever we have a new moon or a full moon that's close to the lunar nodal axis. And so we had our full moon lunar eclipse Saturday in Taurus, and the sun had moved into Scorpio. So what you're looking at on this screen right now is the actual time of the eclipse, which was at about 2:24 p.m. on Saturday. And you can see how we had this lineup in the sign of Scorpio. Let me get my annotator. See how we had the Sun, Mercury, and Mars all in conjunction in the sign of Scorpio, all opposite the sign of Taurus, where we had Jupiter and Uranus. And it was quite intense energy because Mars at 11 degrees Scorpio was exactly opposite Jupiter. And so in the Saturday discussion that Brandy and I had, we talked a lot about this opposition. But again, just thinking of Mars and the power of Mars and the expansive quality of Jupiter, it was really bringing a lot of energy to this eclipse. And since we're talking about Taurus, where the moon was, we were talking about it's fixed earth. So we were talking about Taurus in terms of our possessions and land, and it's ruled by Venus. So things that give us sensuality and comfort and the ground that we stand on, Mother Earth herself. So there was this side of the conversation, but in Scorpio, we were looking at the sun and Mercury and Mars, which Scorpio really wants to go deep, right? This is fixed water. So looking at the what's behind the shadows of what's happening in Taurus. And so this Scorpio season always draws us inward, right? It's the fall in its fixed sign. So as we're deep into fall, the trees are shedding their leaves, the temperatures are changing. We had our first moisture, a little bit of snow in the mountains in New Mexico. And so, it's the Halloween season, right? Ghosts and goblins. And so there is this element of this time of year where not only one is there this ability to withdraw into our inner resources, and we see that in Mother Nature, but it can also have that Halloween element of fear, right? We've been moving through all the gates of the spleen recently, and so those are all deep-rooted fear gates, and so it can bring up this element, this fear nature of this time of year. But again, that fear is drawing us to our awareness. That's what the spleen does, right? The spleen is here to keep us alive in the moment to take care of our health and our immune system. And so these were all just part of our discussion from Saturday. And so we're continuing that story today as we move into Monday. So let's look at let me go ahead and move into the chart for today. It was in gate 28, line 4 is where the eclipse happened. So today we're still in gate 28 in line 6, blaze of glory. Quite an interesting line in the Ray B chain. And this Earth being in gate 27, the gate of caring. And a few things that I want to highlight for the chart before we go into the week. I want to talk about some things that are going to be the same as we move through this week. And Pluto, we've done a lot of talking about Pluto in these last few weeks. Pluto was in retrograde and then it stationed and it started moving direct on October 10th, but it is still just barely moving. You know, it's a slow planet anyway. It takes 248 years to go around the sun. But when it's stationary, it really doesn't move at all. So it's going to be in gate 60 here for quite a while and in line 2 for the rest of the year. But when we think about gate 60 and the channel of mutation, the design that initiates and fluctuates, Pluto is here in gate 60 in the actual gate of limitations of itself. And now we call it also the gate of acceptance. So if anyone is feeling these challenges that Pluto is bringing us to be aware of, these limitations that do exist in it, and how do we find our inner resources in this individual channel? What is our peace, our tranquility amidst the challenging nature and the uncertainty of individual circuitry? A lot of these outer planets, as I want to highlight, are in individual gates, such as Uranus, which is also moving retrograde and slowing down to station and turn forward. It'll start moving forward on January 26th. So it as well is just barely moving at all. And it's in another individual gate, gate 23, the gate of assimilation and the channel of structuring, a design of individuality, finding our unique expression in this throat gate, right? Which can be tied to the pulse. Sometimes we have our knowing and we're able to share it and things just click, and then other times it's gone. And there can be that uncertainty of when will the knowing and the expression come back again. And it's again going to be there for the rest of the year. So this will be part of this is the underlying theme of the week, are these outer planets that are holding their space. Now, Neptune, although it's in a collective gate, it's been in gate 36, the gate of crisis, for a couple of years now, and we still have about 1.5 years to go. So that's not moving anywhere. It'll be in line 3 for the rest of the year as well. But this idea of in collective circuitry, something that we're all experiencing, this new experience, and it's often fraught with crisis. Now, line 3 is the line of transition. So the idea that the darkening of the night has ended and we are hopefully coming over the crest here, but this is a very slow moving process. It's the planet Neptune. Now, Neptune rules Pisces. It's the planet of our imagination, spirituality, but it's limitless. Like there's no boundaries. It's outside the limits of Saturn. And so it has this veil quality. Sometimes it may feel like, you know, even in the news, there is so much crisis. It's hard to even to know where it ends and where it begins. It's just a lot of turmoil in the world right now. And having Neptune here, this powerful, slow moving planet, it just makes it really hard to interpret. But what I'm seeing with these outer planets and all the individual circuitry they are bringing us, there is a tremendous support in the transit field right now to access our inner self, finding inner order, right? In these individual gates. What is my self-creative, mutative expression in the midst of all that's going on in gate 36. And I do find that there's tremendous support right now for that. Even though it can seem very chaotic, we are living through the cyclical nature of life experiences as we move into another fall season, heading towards winter, a time to go inward and to rejuvenate and replenish. and eventually emerge back out in spring in Aries. But what I see right now with these outer planets that are just holding the scaffolding, they're just not hardly moving at all. Whereas the inner planets are moving very rapidly. They're moving above their average speed right now. And so they're forming all these different aspects every day. And we'll take a look at some of those for each day of the week. But just really want to emphasize how much support right now, I think, for whatever moves you inward, whether it's meditation, walks in nature, yoga, painting, drawing, writing. Really, these can be tremendously supportive right now as we're all finding our footing during this time of transmutation that takes place in Scorpio. It's ruled by not only Mars, but Pluto as well. So we're having this element of death and rebirth and possible transformation. So it's a very deep, fertile time right now for these inner resources. We've also talked a lot about in the last few weeks, Saturn, which has also been moving retrograde and going very slow as it moves towards its station. And it's actually going to turn direct this week on Thursday. So in gate 55, the gate of spirit, individual gate in the solar plexus. And it'll turn direct on Thursday. But again, it's not moving at all. It's certainly going to be here all week and then slowly start to move forward. But I find that gate 55 is part of this story I was sharing, that whatever gives us that individual feeling of emotional spirit and abundance, sometimes it's there, right? It's tied to the pulse, and sometimes it's not. But really wrapping our hands around that, really finding greater self-love in the simple things, what gives us this emotional spirit to continue moving forward. Sometimes it can feel quite dark and cold outside, as it does where I am right now. And the season certainly has that element. But I feel like Saturn here in Pisces, Saturn being the planet of structure and rigidity and limitations. And it's really a teacher. Saturn is here to teach us, and it often does that by providing some of these they feel like tests sometimes. And I don't think anybody really loves the idea of a test. But what I've come to appreciate about Saturn is that, without these tests, we never get to know who we are. When life, those periods of life that are really smooth and really easy, we really don't grow. We enjoy it, and it's certainly nice while those periods happen. But without challenges in life, we cannot grow. And that always makes me think of gate 6. Gate 6, the tagline is that the fundamental design component of progress is the law that growth does not exist without friction. We have to work our muscles to make them stronger. And that's what much of what Saturn brings us in life in general. It provides like on the highway, it's going around a bend. It's the guardrails that keep us on our path. And Saturn has this element to it for each of us. And the fact that it's in Pisces, which is the sign of spirituality and illusions and delusions and fantasy and imagination, this is a very Saturn is giving us like a handrail into this realm. And so that's why I keep sharing this idea that it's such a beautiful time to go inward and find spiritual equanimity, as Lisita and I were just talking about. And we also have Jupiter, which is also moving in retrograde, okay, but slowing down as well. And it's in gate 24. Gate of return. And we're going to have this again as we move into tomorrow, because the sun and the earth are going to move into gate 44 and 24. So I'll talk about that a little more in just a moment. But here we have this planet of expansion in the sign of Taurus, which is where gate 24 is located. And this individual circuitry again, where we just can go over and over trying to find that pulse of inspiration. What is my inner truth? And Jupiter is applying a lot of pressure right now in our Ajna center, in our center of conceptualizing, to try to grasp that. So again, just with everything I've shared so far, this intense pressure, if you will, from the transit weather to go inward and see how we experience this. Now, of course, you'll want to apply all of this information to your own chart to see whether you have something a definition that'll be formed, or whether it's defined or undefined center. Again, these are all things that we would want to look at in your personal chart. I'm just describing it from a collective weather standpoint, but from that point, tremendous pressure, yet opportunity to gain more awareness of our individual nature and what our truth is in the world right now. What can we say about it? What may come out of our own voice as we speak this week? And that's going to be very emphasized, as you'll see as we go through each day here. So as I mentioned, we're wrapping up Gate 28. Not going to spend a lot of time on that because we did last week, since we were already in 28 and we talked about it again on Saturday. But just to say that, yeah, the gate of the game player, individual circuitry, and the channel of struggle, design of stubbornness. This is the fear of whether or not life has meaning, to have purpose, right? And Gate 28 is the intuitive, instinctual awareness to recognize which risks might be worth taking so that we can have that sense of personal fulfillment. The polarity of that, the Earth in 27, the gate of caring. And what do we care for? When we have our purpose, the balance of this, how do we share? How do we share and care for others and support them? And so this has been the theme that we've been going through this week. And then today, the moon, which does move very fast, but it is in Gate 20, right? The gate of the now and the integration field. So again, this is something where we may have an emotional quality to share today. There may be something that just suddenly comes out about the now and about this experience of what is fulfilling to me, what is giving me purpose, what challenges and limitations am I experiencing from Pluto in the world that I need to overcome or not. Right? We always have to remember our authority. It is what will keep us dressed for any weather, to be aligned with our personal authority. For most of us, that's going to be a physical felt sense somewhere in one of our inner authority centers, or for the reflector, it's their own inner process. But this is where, certainly in times like this, with some of these intense activations like an eclipse, which often can bring great sudden change, this is where our authority can obviously be extra important, right? To really navigate this dark labyrinth that Scorpio provides us as we go into the underworld of Pluto, to really discover what's underneath there that can be brought up in our life and our expression through our authority, but also our creativity and our mutative stance on how we want to impact the world based on that. The nodes are still in 42 and 32. 42, the gate of growth and the channel of maturation, part of our collective circuitry. It's part of evolution. So as a collective direction right now, we are all working with and trying to understand, what is growth? How as we be ourselves more, how do we contribute and share the growth and expansion possible through these experiences? And it speaks a lot to evolution. We are as we move towards 2027, we are heading towards an evolutionary shift. And I think through the background noise of these slow moving planets, we can see this story continue to build and become louder, if you will. Mercury, which has now moved faster than the sun and Mars and moved past them. When we had the solar eclipse, Mercury was still approaching the sun and Mars, and now it has, because it's moving quite fast right now, it has moved past the Mars and the sun, and it's in gate 1. So again, another individual gate of self-expression, the most creative gate in the body graph, really, the idea of self-expression. So with Mercury here, and with the moon in gate 20, it's a good day, I think, just to hear what comes out spontaneously, right? As we work on our reflective practices and things that nourish us each day, to see what is emerging there. And Mercury is giving us this vibrational quality to express ourselves in a creative way. Venus is in Virgo, currently in gate 47, in the gate of realizing. But here, as I circle this, we can see that we have these two gates in the Ajna center that are really kind of going around the wheel, trying to understand, trying to make sense of the past. It's a very tumultuous time in the world, and trying to understand all that. And here Venus is working with that. The thing I want to say about as we look at transits is we really get to know these gates much better through these transits, whether we have them activated in our natal chart or not. We are getting a flavor of them. So again, really nice time to listen to this and then reflect on your own chart and how that gate relates to your body graph. But here, one thing we can share in the Ash is that we're trying to figure it out. And each of these gates is being imprinted by the flavor of the planet. Each planet carries its own vibrational quality. So as the neutrinos pass through them and pick up that substance that hits us, we get to experience these gates through the quality of that planet. And so with Venus, we think of Venus's love, the beauty, the passion. It's what moves us. It's our desires, what we want. And so we want very much to really understand what all this means, to realize where we fit into the greater story right now. And so everything to me is pushing us inward to try to understand that. Mars, also in Scorpio, is in gate 44, line 6 today. Well, we'll see tomorrow the sun is going to move into gate 44. So we can see with this conjunction of Sun, Mars, and Mercury, what we call a stellium in astrology, how we're getting this succession of hits on these gates, right? Each turned on by the vibrational quality of each planet. So it's like a boom, boom, boom. It's like a rhythm right now, driving us deep into the scorpionic underworld to discover our creative mutative process, voice, and presence amidst the greater totality. And while that is happening, as we can see from the chart, Jupiter is still opposing all of this. So it's really expanding it. Whatever Jupiter is in conversation with in the sky, whatever it touches or is in aspect with, it's bringing an expansive quality to that. And it's in Taurus going, the opposite of Scorpio, which is all about going deep into the underworld. Taurus is on the earth. It's in the 3D world. And so it can be very rattling to our Taurus nature to have to get drug into this deep, dark ocean, right? The deep within the deep. Taurus wants to be comfortable and stable and on beautiful land with our home and resources. And so there's a real tug of war right now. Jupiter is adding this volume to this conversation about what is really important to us deep down inside of us. Jupiter's amping up the quality of that conversation. And it also has Uranus down here, which is not exactly opposite, but it's still in Taurus. So Uranus is bringing this very unusual quality that it does. And again, being at gate 23 can be a very helpful week to just hear in our conversations with other people what spontaneously comes out that we resonate with. Sometimes we say things and we're like, I really didn't mean it that way. That's not what I meant. But then sometimes we say something like, wow, that sounded really good. Like that was me. That was my voice there. So just to be aware of these influences that we're undergoing right now. Now, another thing that's very interesting about today, I'm going to wrap up today. We'll move in tomorrow and also into gate 44. But you'll notice in the chart on the right, these purple lines, they're called septiles. And in astrology, the keynote word for a septile, which is part of our seventh harmonic, is mystical. And they're almost like portals. The aspect is a non-prime number, so they're not like the typical harmonic aspects or Ptolemaic aspects, which are based more on the signs. They're not a whole number. They're not a prime number. But that leads to the idea that there's just something that can come through. It's like if you have a staticky radio station and you're tuning a dial like in the old days, and all of a sudden something would come through. Well, there's very heavy septile activity in the chart today. And one of those that's going to be exact tomorrow, but very strong today, is this gate 23 Uranus communicating with this limitation. And so that's why I was saying before that just be mindful of what comes out today. What is that expression that may come out that may provide something that wasn't there before? For any of us that are working on this deep inner work, there are those moments, those inspirational individual circuitry type moments where there is a knowing, something just emerges, and septile activity in the chart can really support that. And so we see that between Uranus and Pluto. And we also have it with Chiron is in septile to Mars, but really because this conjunction here, it's septile to all of it. Now, Chiron was a big theme when the eclipse season or when the eclipse portal started 2 weeks ago, right? Because Chiron was opposite the solar eclipse in Libra at that time. So it's still very much in this conversation. Chiron is currently in Aries in gate 51, line 2. So the gate of shock, right? Our individual courage. But it's Chiron in the sign of self-expression. So this could be stimulating any vulnerabilities that we may have been feeling, which is also accented by the Scorpio season. So again, just another reason, very potent time for healing, and hopefully, possibly today with this septile, that something may emerge that lends itself to that. But just say it's very healthy and supportive time that things regarding relationships or healing or moving on or letting go, this is all part of this season, and some of these planets are really contributing to that idea, particularly Chiron. And it's also, Chiron is also septile to Venus over in Virgo. So again, it's tied into that conversation about relationships, whether a new one has started or whether one has ended, or maybe one needs to be revamped. It needs to be re-examined to move forward. And so this, again, this idea of vulnerabilities, of healing and supporting each other within these relationships is highly emphasized today. The moon, which has moved into Gemini this morning, so it's at 1 degree Gemini, it is in a bit of a conflict, frictional, I would say, right? It's dealing with this gate 55 where Saturn is, it's applying a little bit of emotional pressure. So that's why today, again, there's this element of, yes, it's a great day that something could emerge in our voice or in our emotional quality in regards to these relationships. But there's this idea of gate 55, the spirit, does it move my spirit or not? And the moon in its current aspect is, again, pressurizing from gate 20, pressurizing what is my voice amidst this limitation? What do I have to say about it? And just through listening and being aware, through our emotional quality and our actual verbal expression, there may be some messages there for us. There may be something to emerge today that could lend itself to resolving this conversation that we're involved in. Okay, so that's all for today, I would say. Let me clear the drawings and we'll move on to and I do see there's some things going on in the chat, and it would be helpful if somebody wants to join me and just point some things out, or just come forward and ask your questions. That would be great. Otherwise, I'm going to move into tomorrow here. So as I mentioned, we can see that, or I can also go to the chat after I'm finished here. Either way, whatever you guys feel like. But if you have something burning, please come forward. I'd be happy to hear from you and address it now, or we can talk about it once I finish running through the week here. But yes, here we have the sun moving into gate 44, line 1. So we're back into tribal circuitry in the splenic awareness center, the gate of alertness, coming to meet. This gate is the fear of the past. Now, you know, we have the node in 32, and this is part of that story, right? So when we start from the root to the splenic awareness center in the tribal circuitry of the channel of transformation, we have gate 54, the gate of drive, gate 32, the instinctual awareness to recognize the correct drive that's going to support the tribe. Well, 32 is the fear of failure, the failure of our tribe, the failure of our community. That's a pretty fear gate. We don't want that to happen, right? So there's this tremendous importance to what is a value that we want to carry forward, the gate of continuity. How do we carry this forward to support our tribe? And once it gets processed in the immediate cusp of the now, spontaneous splenic awareness and intuition, we have the probable awareness of gate 44. This is the alertness and the instinctual awareness to recognize who has the correct ego that we can meet to transmit and surrender to the fact that we got to keep each other alive, right? We need to be healthy together. If the tribe is not healthy, we wither away and die. So 44 has this incredible importance for all of us of being aware of of connecting with each other to transmit how we can succeed, not only on the material plane, but also in health-wise, right? To be well. We can't take care of each other if we get sick. We can't survive if we don't have food and shelter and income and material resources. And so that's why we call 44 people that have Gate 44 have this element of the personnel manager to recognize who they can meet that has the ego motor and power to transmit to the tribe to say, hey, everybody, this is what we got to do. You know, we've got to do this now if we're going to survive. And again, I just feel that we feel that with the season of Scorpio, right? Going deep behind the curtain. You know, what are the forces at play, the powerful forces at play that we either have to separate from or align with? And Gate 44 speaks so much about that. This is I'm going to read the tagline from Gate 44. The success of any interaction is based on the absence of any preconditions. And the absence of preconditions, to me, that speaks to the spleen, right? The spleen is in the now, right? Whenever we're thinking about the past or a fear of the future, we're not in the moment. And so this absence of preconditions is being centered within our intuitive awareness. But ironically, and quite funny, line 1 is called the line of conditions. So even though this gate is telling us to be centered with our physical immune system, the little hairs on our neck, this alert system, and our intuition, line 1 is saying, yeah, but we have to understand that there is a natural hierarchy within the society that we live in, within our community. And it has the potential to discover the mastery of that, to be alert to what is truly of value, that is going to be the most supportive thing to the tribe. And of course, the earth being opposite that in Gate 24, also in Taurus. Again, I mentioned that a little bit with this is where we have Jupiter. So the Jupiter is conjunctus, and I mentioned the expansiveness that brings, but this grounding of going over and returning and being sure. Just that we want to be clear on the inspiration, what really deep down moves us in a very inspirational way. We can see that Uranus is forming a very strong trine with Venus right now on Tuesday, so this being tomorrow. Now, in terms of astrological aspects, this is a beautiful aspect. Venus, again, being when we think of pleasure and values and morals and what do we want out of life? That's kind of the short phrase I use for Venus. Venus is what we want so much. And to have it in a trine with Uranus, the planet of unusual, and this could be something fun, right? Something unusual that sparks our interest or our pleasure. But I just find that tomorrow, this trine in the midst of this dark, heading towards wintry season that Scorpio, that we find ourselves in this fixed water sign, this can be a really supportive element. And just to remember that it's in Gate 23, right? So what are we speaking about tomorrow? What is something that is moving our inspirational creative quality? This is really coming into focus tomorrow. And I had mentioned the septile that Uranus is forming with Pluto. So something regarding these limitations, these challenges that we can either decide to work and fight through or not, right? This all comes back to our authority, but there's something that there may be a message in a bottle, so to speak. These septiles give us the idea that, you know, if we're just being within ourselves, not overstepping, right? If someone like me, emotionally defined solar plexus, being careful of the extreme ends of my way, but if I can remain centered within that, and have this equanimity that if there's a challenge to move forward, something may present itself. There may be an unusual solution that just feels like it popped into thin air that is regarding this Gate 60 and the idea of things that may be limiting that I need to move through or not. And now we see that Mars also has moved into Gate 1. So now it's also in this gate of self-expression, all coming back to this idea of the inner world right now. Very fertile time to be exploring what is our expression. Mars brings a tremendous energy wherever it goes. We do often think of it as our immaturity. Mars can overstep itself sometimes. Mars is in its home sign, and that's one of the reasons we were talking about this eclipse on Saturn being so powerful, because Mars is at home, so it can do what it wants. However, it is in our gate one, right? So this power to be creative is going to be with us this week. And so can be really supportive to us when it's in check and when it's in line with our authority. We can experience the power of Mars in a more beneficial way, in a more empowering way. Okay, and I think that's all the rest of those were pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and move into Wednesday. Well, I did have the just to show everyone the hexagram here, the gate of alertness. Already covered the tagline here, and the chops are heaven over wind, and then in gate 24 rationalism, which is earth over thunder in Taurus.
With a pre-return posted.
Now, when we get to Wednesday, so I feel like I've sort of set the storyline of the week. But on Wednesday, if you look at the astrological chart and notice how messy it's gotten, right? There are so many aspects as these planets are moving through their degrees here. You can see just by looking at the chart, it's a bit of a confusing day. So many planets, it's like everyone's in this like in a noisy, I'm in a coffee shop right now. So it's like when a whole lot of people are talking and they're all contributing their voice, things can get muddled. It can be a little fuzzy. And that's kind of the feeling I'm getting by looking at the chart on Wednesday. The moon has moved down to over here at the 28 degrees Gemini, right? So it takes about 2.5 days for a planet, for the moon to go through an astrological sign. So now we've reached the end of Gemini here, and it's forming a quincunx with this challenge that we're talking about, this Pluto in gate 60 and limitations. And so for Wednesday, the moon is again applying a bit of an uncomfortable quality to this challenge, right? So, but it's all part of that story this week, where sometimes there's this pulse of inspiration. I think I have found it, and then it might go away. And so the moon is adding its own challenges to that conversation right here. But I'm not going to take the time to go through all of these aspects, because we can see that there's just a lot of red lines, which tend to mean harder aspects, which to me mean greater opportunity of awareness. So through the confusion on Wednesday and how we might be a little physically uncomfortable about, it's not making sense. Is it making sense? I don't really know.
Yeah.
Being continually daily find that inner grounding is what's going to carry us through, right? But that is really the message here, that the moon in Gemini, it's going to move through all of our as it moves through Gemini, it goes through almost all of the throat gates. So that's why this week I was saying that, just listening to ourselves when we're speaking with friends or family or loved ones, how are we expressing ourselves? Because the moon is doing its dance through the throat center this week. And so we're feeling a lot of things from all the aspects we've been talking about, but the moon itself is saying, here's what we have to say about it. And on Wednesday, it's in gate 12, the gate of caution, in the channel of openness, design of a social being. But again, through these last few days, it's touching on so many of the throat gates, just to be aware of the quality of our voice this week. We can speak maybe a little more emotionally because the moon is there, but it is helping us. We use the word soundboarding, right? Soundboarding, where we're just sometimes sharing to hear ourselves talk, but we may find deeper meaning, deeper resonance with what's going on the inside of our bodies as we verbally express ourselves to others in a comfortable way, in a comfortable environment where we're not under pressure in that sense. Now we're moving to Thursday. We're moving into line 3 of gate 44. And we can see from the body graph on the left that we do get a channel activated, and it is by the moon. So the moon has moved into Cancer over here, 10 degrees Cancer, which is gate 39. So I think this again on Thursday, so much I have shared recent weeks has been about gate 51 and how valuable Saturn being there, giving us some stability and some structure to how we're understanding our emotional spirit. And now the moon moving into the gate of provocation in gate 39 is activating the channel of emoting, design of emotional being. So again, it's bringing stuff up. The moon is provoking us here to access Saturn in Pisces in gate 55. What is our what is our inspiration of purpose? I just can't kind of stop saying the same thing because that's what we're under pressure to figure out right now. And I certainly think for this particular day of Thursday, for all of us experiencing the channel of emoting, is to observe, to journal. I love wild mind writing, just to explore, give ourselves the freedom in a safe environment, if that's at our home or where it might be, or if it's being out in nature, whatever's grounding for us right now, to allow our emotions to express, to not run from them, to sit with them, even when they're uncomfortable. I find as a defined solar plexus being, that's my inner authority, it's the low ends that actually hold the keys, right? But it's so difficult because it's the low end when I would prefer to run away from it. I'd prefer to cover it up or suppress it to deal with life, but yet allowing myself the space and support and comfort and time to actually be with the emotions. And Thursday, again, is a great day for that, to give yourself the creative space and opportunity to explore what's happening in our inner world. As we move into Friday, we can see that the moon is still in Cancer.
It does feel like that.
Oh, I'm on Saturday. Excuse me. Let me back up here, guys. I got this is where I wanted to be. Yeah. So the moon has been moving through Cancer in gate 62, right? Providing some details mainly. This would be very helpful on Friday. Maybe the moon can offer us some details to go along with this very watery Scorpio season we're in right now, where things are very hard to grab onto. This whole energy I've been describing is it's very hard to see things clearly. That's why accessing our inner resources and inner order is, to me, the stability right now, Saturn in 55 and all the other individual gates. But on Friday, the moon may provide something. It may bring some details to the surface, something in the pattern of this messiness and watery world. There may be something of clarity here. So the moon there, we also see that this channel of structuring gate 43 with Mercury would have moved into gate 43 on Thursday evening. That's why on Thursday we didn't see the channel of structuring, but as Mercury moved into 43, the gate of insights, we are going to have this channel. I think it's Friday and Saturday. We'll double check that when I move to Saturday. But here we again have this channel of structuring, design of individuality, having Mercury in the gate of insights. Well, Jupiter up here in 24, we've been under pressure to figure it out. What are we keep returning, but it's there and it's not there. But yet with Mercury moving into 43, we may have an insight. There may be something of value that can be shared in a very unique way. So just really emphasizing yet again this individual nature of ourselves, listening to what we have to share spontaneously in the now. So much individual circuitry. We're looking so much happening with the sun and the splenic awareness center being present right now. Anytime we get a little off kilter, I think just taking those few deep breaths, right? And then what is coming out? And so Mercury is supporting that in its scorpionic way right now, turning on this gate of insights.
Yeah.
Also, the moon is moving in. You can see here that the moon and later degrees of Cancer, it is forming a trine with Neptune. Now, Neptune, as I mentioned, has been really providing a lot of obscuration to what's going on. It brings the veil and the gate of crisis, and it's been in challenging aspects to Scorpio because it's in the sign itself is a quincunx to the Scorpio activity. So that's why Neptune has been making things so clear, unclear on the outside. So like when there's a fog or a haze, it's really hard to pick out our steps forward. But here the moon is providing some emotional support to that. That, hey, with our health in Taurus, right, with going deeply inward, I think the moon on Friday is sharing some emotional support to this. Maybe with that gate 62, giving us maybe something concrete, some action plan, some level of detail that helps us organize our life in this watery world of Scorpio that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And yes, we can see as we move into Saturday that we still do have the channel of structuring there. Mercury, is at 43 line 3, and so actually through the rest of the week that I'll cover through Sunday, we're going to have this channel of structuring. So always, as I keep sharing, the idea of our authority, right? Doesn't mean that just because we can share something that we should, but based on authority, we may actually end up speaking some element of truth for ourselves. Whatever we've been working on in this underworld of Scorpio, spending our time nurturing our creative, mutative side and our place within this conversation of us in relation to everything that's happening, not only our relationships, but the world at large. There is this opportunity of communication where some deep insight that explains all this to ourselves may come through. And that's why I think this idea of journaling or writing or whatever, however you speak your inner world to yourself, that is really a great thing to be working on this week to provide some clarity amidst all this veil of obscuration that Neptune is sending us. We can also see that with Mercury moving into gate 43, it's also forming an opposition to the Uranus as I'm speaking about. So just from the polarity of the astrological signs, this idea of what grounds us, it's being shaken up, not only by the fact that Uranus is there, but now Mercury's on the opposite side of the table and they're having this conversation, right? And it's this tug and pull, right? We know that this is one of the three channels that forms a polarity in the body graph: 2343, 3740, and 3420. So they're the most common channels that we see across humanity. So this is a deep commonality that we share, is going through this channel very regularly, right? Every 6 months, the sun and the earth define it. The nodes, anytime there's something opposite in this area in the chart, we're going to have this channel. So it's very much of our collective human nature to be able to share our unique insights with each other. And so just bringing the emphasis to that this week between not only Uranus and Mercury. So, what I was saying is these planets turn on these gates with their vibrational quality. So something unusual, something unique. And boy, doesn't it take that right now. As we look across the world or read the news, none of our old solutions are working. We can't base what we need to do in the future based on what's happened in the past. What's happened in the past doesn't seem to be working anymore. So much of that was due to Pluto spending the last 15 years in Capricorn. Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. Capricorn represents our structure of our societies, our governments, our communities. And we've seen how it's so hard to trust these institutions anymore, right? They're not taking care of their people. And it's really across the board. Any country you look at, there's this factionalism, this extremism. So we're in this really heated element. I think part of the lead up to the evolutionary shift in 2027, it's part of that. But regardless of all of that happening, we still are here alive, breathing on this earth for a very specific reason for each of us. And this season right now, and particularly this week, is an opportunity to maybe get a sense of our voice in that. Maybe this eclipse may be bringing a change of a course correction, which is often what eclipses do. They bring a sudden course correction on something that's been happening. Maybe again, it could have been a relationship that may or may not have been working, or a career, or anything of life nature that's requiring us to make a change, we may be able to hear that this week through our individual nature, working on our inner self and our emotional qualities and our creative side. Something has this opportunity this week. The theme I'm getting this week is that something may emerge that can give us a little bit of detail or a little bit of clarity on where our next steps, based on our authority, where we may move forward. And we move into Sunday. We see that we're in line 6 of gate 44. So we have this whole week now to be working with this energy of the gate of alertness, and whatever it might be bringing you in your own chart, but we'll wrap that up. And not only will we wrap up gate 44, but we're also going to be ending the quarter of duality, right? So much of our conversations this past month that I've been doing these reports has been so much about harmony and relationship, this whole idea of the quarter of duality. Who are we in the midst of each of our relationships? We'll be wrapping that up this week, and we'll be moving into the quarter of mutation, right? And so there'll be a different theme next week as we move forward. So when I think of it that way, I just think it's a good time to be focusing on all of these elements right now. So in that sense, gate 44 is the wrapping up of this area of the wheel and of our personal charts. We'll finish the week. All of these planets are still in Scorpio. Mercury will be moving out sometime the following week. But what we can see here on Sunday is this trine forming between Pluto and Venus, which is it was in gate 6 for most of this week. I'm sorry I didn't mention that Venus was in gate 6. I was talking about some of the aspects. But here there's this support from Venus with this limitation, right? It's in the gate of friction, which I mentioned in the tagline. I mean, it is a fundamental design component of progress that we're going to have these at times when we can feel this resistance. Are we going to bond or not? That's what gate 6 is saying, is, are we in this together or are we not? But yet on Sunday here, we can see that Venus is supporting this limitation. So maybe through our relationships, we're either moving through it, or we've decided to cut it, or we just need to alter it in some way. But there's something here supportive where we're going to feel moved in regards to however we might personally be experiencing Pluto in its current position right now. We can also see that Neptune is forming a trine with this stellium over here at Scorpio. So even though it's bringing this veil, this sort of unlimited crisis, is hard not to keynote it that way, because that's what it can feel like in today's world right now. But yet here it's supporting this Scorpio element. So I think by the end of the week, with all this digging down, rummaging through our inner world, something may emerge here. We also have the moon forming a trine to Chiron, right, which is so much part of this story. So hopefully, maybe in your personal stories, if any of this is resonating with current relationships, there can be some element of movement by the end of the week, right? That something comes to light, that we can be from our solar plexus, whether we're defined or not. It is our nervous system, but some sort of balancing and nervous system regulation about, yes, okay, I'm somewhat emotionally clear about the situation that I'm dealing with right now. We may see that come to the surface on Sunday. So I think that wraps up what I was going to share. Let me take a look at the chat now. And again, happy for anyone that may want to come forward and ask a question or share any comments of what they saw on the chart. Yeah, let's get creative. Absolutely to that. Lucita, hi, yes, please.
So, hi. I was looking at Venus. So earlier in the week, it was in 47. And on a day where you said it was going to be very peaceful, it was actually on the gate. It was on the line of futility. So do you have any comment on that?
Well, that's, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I'm quite familiar with that line, actually, because I have that line. And it's one of those lines in the Ravy Cheek that only has the detriment. And it brings this idea that, it's futile. There is no way out. My experience of that is that it can also bring a sense of surrender, to surrender to it is what it is, right? We may think it's futile, but yet we are connected at a deeper level. And also the line 6 is always in transition. So it's ready to move past this realizing. It's ready to move to the next thing. And it's almost like it says at line 6, like, you know what? There is no resolution in the solar plexus. It is always going to keep going over and grinding. In some ways, some days and times it can feel futile, but yet there can be the surrender to the process. And to me, that's what the channel of abstraction is in a sense saying to us, that, even though it may seem futile, we still move forward into the next wave, and we still move forward into the next gate. And let me go back to the day that we were talking about.
I think it's related to acceptance being so integral to human design, that we surrender to the world as it is, rather than trying to imagine it would be better if it was the way we visualized it or something.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that acceptance. Yeah, to accept. Yeah, very true. And also the fact of it being in Virgo, to me, it lends itself to, Virgo is so much about our health and our health habits and the details. Virgo is a very organized sign in itself. And so somehow these details of this process, the acceptance that we do need to focus on our habits, to be healthy, to have good relationships, we do need healthy habits in support of that. And the acceptance of that, there is a cause and effect to our actions, and placing our emphasis on healthy Virgo habits can contribute to our personal health as well as the health of our relationships.
So I'm going to drop off in a minute or two. So just to say thank you. It was
Thank you very
helpful.
much, Lucita.
And I did lose the video recording, but I'll listen to it again another way.
Yeah, and I've got mine going, but thank you for the backup. I appreciate that. I've got one going. Yeah, 47.6. It's an interesting one. Yep. It is what it is. Yeah. From Richard Rudd. Yes, to offer you the possibility of expanding your capacity to love. Yeah, certainly, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Did anyone else have anything they'd like to share or offer or comment on before we wrap it up here? I don't see anyone right now. Okay. Well, again, thank you all for being here. And I do hope you have a lovely, beautiful, creative week. It can be a fun season if we play the part. And I think of Halloween, I think it's just so fitting that we have Halloween this time of year, the idea of putting on costumes and in a sense, making fun of fear. Right? These gates of the spleen, they are so strong. We think about the Godhead Minerva that we've been in for the past 4 hexagrams. There are these deep underlying dark fears that we see that are brought to us by those gates and by Scorpio, but having fun with that, being that creative element again, putting on the mask and the costume and laughing at fear. And this is part of throwing ourselves into the void, the idea of that innocence that we're just here and we can accept it and surrender to it and still find this deep beauty in each day, in each moment that we get to see a plant or a tree or be next to a loved one. These are incredible gifts. So that I think all of that brings us back into ourselves allows us to have that gratitude, to have that lightness of Halloween, the humor and the fun in the midst of the fear. Great week for all that. Hi, Christine. Hi there. Nice to see you. Yeah, thank you for being here. Yes, right back at you. Yay. Everybody have a lovely day. I'm going to wrap it up now, but thank you all so much for being here. Have a lovely week.